Bird. Bring him. Bring Beaky.
From Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Outside in the warm Miami air, Winch will turn to me.
What was your name again, kid?
It's still Heller. Nathan S. Heller.
Aren't you gonna spell it?
Look, I don't want to be in your story.
Good, because you're not. You're Chicago, right?
Born and bred.
What do you make of that, in that cell back there?
You're New York. What do you make of it?
It's horseshit. I think that little bastard hit Cermak. I think he thinks he's dying from that stomach of his, and the mobsters probably promised to support his family back in Italy in return for him taking Tony out, and for his silence. What do you think?
I think you're right on the money. But if you print it, nobody will believe a word.
What's the guy to do? Bullshit they'll believe. Take it from me. Facts only bore 'em.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the, of course, perhaps never to be defined, existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm Robcasting you from right here in the Robservatory, right at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 1072. I can't believe you've been with me for 1072 episodes. Why? Why are you so nutty? Well, I'll tell you why, because I bring you the best damn genre entertainment on the YouTubes, on the interwebs, only the very best people, the smartest people, the most imaginative people. And my last episode, boy, did I bring you one of those people, and you people loved it. And we only got halfway through his career. We barely got into Star Trek, and you know how I like to talk about Star Trek. You know him, you love his bird. You love his bird probably more than you love me. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, Mr. Doug Drexler is back.
Hey, how goes it?
How
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you
I can't
again.
believe we only got up to Star Trek after last time was like over 2 hours, I think.
Over 2 hours. But you know what? People loved hearing the stories of a fan made good. And you're not just a fan made good. You are somebody, Academy Awards, Emmy Awards. You worked on your favorite show. And I wanted to just...
That's crazy.
I wanted to kind of like sort of jump right back into Star Trek because it's something I haven't worked on actual Star Trek shows, but I got to work on documentaries for CBS, the Star Trek Experience. I was a Star Trek consultant. So I have a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be a fan and work for the thing that you love, but you actually worked on it. You made Star Trek. And once you got in there, once you started working on the show, what was that like for you? Like in terms of, did you have to pinch yourself when you drove on to the Paramount lot every day? Was it difficult to contain? I mean, obviously you were already an Academy Award-winning makeup effects artist. You'd worked in the industry. But what was it like then working for that well-oiled machine that Rick Berman and Gene and everybody had put together? And how did you sort of reconcile the fan in you with the professional? How'd you do it?
That, I was really, I could not have possibly gone there coming from a better situation. Having come from Dick Tracy, I know not everybody remembers how powerful Warren Beatty was when Beatty did a movie. It was huge. And it was also well known that we had like every big star in Hollywood was on that show.
Right.
So when I got to Star Trek, there was no, the worst thing is going into a job and being intimidated and afraid. And by that point in my career, there was no intimidation at all. It was just sheer enjoyment to go, which is, my God. Plus, I walk in with all that cred, everybody was delighted that I was there. They felt special, believe it or not, that I was there. The thing about, first, it couldn't be more unreal. It's as unreal as you could possibly imagine. To think that, you heard my story about growing up and every bit of everything right up to this point. Star Trek has always been in the forefront of my brain. To actually be on the show was nirvana for me. It was like Mount Olympus.
Was this third or fourth season of TNG?
I got there at the beginning of the third season.
Right so you were there when Michael Piller came on. And yeah. So that's when it really started. It had done well, but season 3 is when it really started to change. It was still, the writing staff was still in a state of discombobulation, but the episodes started to really Piller made a significant change in that he said, look, rather than having an external force, all of our stories have to first start with our characters, and he made a significant change to the writing of the show in that third season, and everything started to change. They changed the uniforms. You had the spacesuits went to the 2-piece, and things started to really it was still crazy. But so what was it like for you? Like, you'd already watched Next Generation. You were already a Star Trek fan. How did you feel about Next Generation, about where it was, and what exactly was your job? Were you working for Michael Westmore?
Yeah. I came to work for Michael Westmore. I was a big Next Generation fan, huge fan for the first 2 years. I knew that in some ways it was a little wobbly, but I thought but you could see the potential was incredible. And I just knew that if we gave it enough time, because there would be shining moments all through the first and second season. Yeah. It wasn't until and there are some episodes that are stupendous from the first 2 seasons.
I agree.
But when they got to season 3, it just took off like a skyrocket. There was a whole new energy to the types of stories and the way they were telling them. So I came in a total geeky fan. A complete. And
did you have to temper that? Did you have to kind of not let people know what kind of a fan you were?
No, because, and Mike had told me to be cautious about being a fan on stage. But look, and he's right. I think I told you, because fans were known for breaking into the stage and taking things. There's videos on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about. I had just come from, I said it before, I just had come from the biggest show in town with the biggest actors in town with Warren Beatty, who was a Hollywood god at the time. So I felt that I came in with enough cred, like I kind of came from where they all wanted to go.
Right, sure.
So I just let it out. You know, I gushed over the actors when I talked to them. You know, I had no fear of being a geeky fan on stage. If I had not had this amazing experience in the business, you know, and then, you know, we got nominated for an Oscar. And if I didn't have that, if I was just another, I don't mean to put it this way, another makeup artist,
sure,
I wouldn't have been like that. But I felt like at this point, I could be any way I want and everyone would be happy about it.
Sure.
And it really did, you know, turn out that way. And of course, the beautiful thing about being a makeup artist is that you literally live with the actors. And you were on stage as long as, and maybe longer than they are every day.
Right.
And I feel like I was part of the Enterprise D crew. You know, when you're standing there talking to Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner, and they're both in costume and makeup and stuff like that, you're in the show.
Right.
You know? But it really, I mean, especially looking back, it really was absolutely nuts that I ended up there. I mean, I knew how amazing and crazy it was. I mean, now at my age now, I can look back and say, wow, did you have supernatural luck for the things that happened to you, you know? And a lot of things, great things that happened to me after Next Generation, but that was like a moment where I knew that I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
Sure.
You know, and everyone, I mean, imagine coming there and everyone's excited that you're there. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they felt kind of the same way they had Whoopi Goldberg, also Academy Award winner, coming on the show. Exactly. And I remember when I was hosting that roundtable conversation, Brent Spiner tells the story that Rick Berman called him up and said, we have an Academy Award winner, a big star joining Star Trek. And like, you were like, from the behind the scenes, you were also that caliber coming onto the show. I mean, another Academy Award winner. And
I couldn't have come on the show under better conditions. I mean, it's totally.
One of the things about the makeup, like especially in the third season, you had episodes like Sins of the Father, which you had multiple Klingons on set. There was a lot of interesting aliens, and of course the Borg. All of that was all happening. How was the pace of a weekly show when you're shooting 8 days for an episode? What was that like, and was it different from working on set on a feature film?
Well, no. I mean, working on a feature film can be a lot tougher. You know, if you're doing a TV show, you can push the crew and make them work long hours, but it really is being monitored because they have a long-term thing going on here. It's not like getting on a show with Michael Mann, for instance,
right?
Who's kind of a loose cannon, you know, and is passionate and nutty, and things can go really crazy. I mean, my experiences on Manhunter were wild. But working on Star Trek was hard work for everybody, and there were times when, you know, I wouldn't get done until 2:00 in the morning.
Sure.
But I was so, this was where I was meant to be. And I didn't care how many hours there were. And the later it got, the funnier it got. The thing I have to say about the cast is that they all had an amazing sense of humor. And they actually taught Patrick to be funny.
Right. Yeah, at first he was a big stick in the mud.
Yeah. But he became just as wacky and silly as they were. I mean, when we were doing Inner Light, I guess, and Picard's like on the floor having that dream.
Right.
You remember? Everybody was on the floor rolling around, and you know, there were people going crazy because they're collecting lint on their uniforms. It was like a bunch of kids. And the later it got, the funnier it actually got, because everyone gets a little, you know, when you're sleep deprived, how there's a part of your personality that comes out. It's crazy that you would never, you know. So it would just get funnier and funnier and funnier. Although I have to say, one of the most amazing things, this crew was never serious when they were rehearsing. Every rehearsal, there was a gag or a punchline or something silly said. But as soon as they called action, it was like that. They were like right on it. Now, if you're able to do that, producers don't mind if you're silly during your rehearsals because they know you're going to handle it. You know? But it was the funniest. And man, I mean, I would watch Brent Spiner standing in the corner with his phaser, spinning it around, even though there's no, where the trigger is, there's no trigger guard on a phaser. Right. Still, it's hard to like spin it around and flip it into that little foam holster that they used to have, or watching LeVar Burton using the consoles. Brent also was amazing using the consoles. It was like a little dance. They had it worked out like it was something you did every day, so it just came across so natural that you utterly believed. And I've seen plenty of actors who can't use the consoles. They can't convince you that they're really using them.
Right.
But these guys were poetry, and I just loved watching them doing it, and all the while being incredibly funny. I mean, Frakes is one of the funniest guys. I think everyone knows how funny he is.
Yeah. And he's still directing Star Trek to this day.
That's incredible. It's really incredible.
Now, when you got there, you actually were on Next Gen. You got to see the inception and the creation of Deep Space Nine, of Voyager, of Enterprise, where you actually were instrumental in designing an Enterprise. What was that like watching? I mean, the by the end of the third season and Best of Both Worlds Part 1, the whole world was talking about that cliffhanger, and Star Trek had now changed the television landscape because first-run syndication was now successful. It used to be just for talk shows and things like that, and because of that, Paramount started to make War of the Worlds, and they made Mission Impossible, and then you were there when UPN was starting, and Voyager was going to start a whole new Paramount network. At first, it's one thing to get hired as a makeup effects artist on a show, but you moved into the art department. You saw the Star Trek empire begin to grow, and Berman was producing 2 Star Trek shows and then movies. And you were there. You were there at Ground Zero when Star Trek. You were there, so it had been revived, but then it became the Galactic Empire as you were watching it unfold. What was that like for you in terms of you moved into the art department, you had these relationships with people like Herman Zimmerman, of course, Mike and Denise, the crown prince and princess of Star Trek, who had the soul, of that show. Yeah. Mike starting on Voyage Home and Denise being on the rec deck of the Enterprise motion picture. You guys had this unique position in that you're these fans, but you're also creating the look and feel. So what was it like for you to move through Star Trek all during the 1990s? I know that's a huge all-encompassing question, but you were there, man, and the art department had to work on all these shows, and suddenly with Deep Space Nine, half your principal cast is in makeup all the time, unlike, say, just Worf. What was it all like? How did that all develop for you?
Gee, well, the beautiful thing about that era of Star Treks was that everybody was on the same backlot. Everybody. The visual effects, Image G had, they were off lot, but they were real close by.
Yeah,
but
sure.
The writers, the producers, the wardrobe, everything was all on the Paramount backlot, like the original series. And so everybody knew each other. And everybody came up to the art department, or we were visiting on stage. Of course, I knew the entire stage crew because I spent almost 3 years with them all. We felt like family. Then you go up to the art department, which is a real plus, by the way, because I know the crew on stage and in the mill already. When I go to the art department, I have a relationship with everybody. We like each other. And if I'm involved with designing something on stage, I know they've got my back.
Right, sure.
I've never been on a movie. It's really rare to get on a movie where every department has everybody's back because movies are so nomadic.
Right.
I'm probably never going to see you again after we're done here. And so they'll like throw you under the bus without any issues. It's no problem because who cares? But when you're on a show that goes for that long and it's such a good-natured crew, you just, if someone sees something that I'm involved with and it's falling apart or something's wrong with it, they will call me and let me know. Dougie, you should get down here and take a look at this. I think you might want to. That's amazing. So going to the art department, now I knew Mike, of course. I didn't really know Herman, but Herman's the most lovable, sweet guy in the world. It's going to initiate right away. You're going to fall in love with him, and he's. But for me to go to the art department, and there's a story about that. Sorry if I spin off in different directions.
No, dude, it's okay. Do what you want. Say what you want.
The makeup that I did on Next Generation was Jerry Harden as Mark Twain.
Well, okay.
Now, I had always wanted to do Mark Twain makeup because Dick Smith did an amazing one on Hal Holbrook. And so Mike Westmore had nose appliance and eyebrows.
And I should say that was for Time Zero part 1 and 2.
1 and 2. So I was excited to do a Mark Twain. That was like a dream come true there. But the thing was that Jerry was so good as Mark Twain, and I'm a Hal Holbrook fan, and I was blown away. He was totally, Twain has to be lovable and kind of cute in a way, and Jerry just killed it. And I told him, I go, you are a great Mark Twain. Hal Holbrook takes this on the road, you could do that too. I found out that he did. He started doing it on when they would do the cruises and stuff like that when it was Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He really was awesome. So I was going to start up on Deep Space Nine in the art department at the beginning of the next season, and they were going to be shooting Time Zero Part 2.
Okay, so you were going to transition out of makeup effects and go into the art department.
Into the art department. And my last makeup was Jerry Harden as Twain. So for one day on Star Trek, I worked as a makeup artist in the morning. And I went up to the art department and worked the rest of the day as an art department person. I put my makeup kit under my desk and it stayed there for 7 years, all of DS9. But Mike Westmore asks Mike Okuda, can I have Doug for the beginning of day 1 to do the Mark Twain makeup and show the person who's going to take over how to do it?
So this is the end of season 5 and then the beginning of season 6.
I guess so.
Because you had Descent was season 6 and 7. So Time Zero was season 6 to season 7.
Exactly.
Or no, season 5 to season 6, pardon me. So it's 5. That makes sense because Deep Space Nine started in 93. So it would have been 92. So yeah, that's exact. Wow. Now, did you want to make the transition from makeup to art department, or did somebody ask you? How did that come about? Because those are two very, I know you're working with both, but.
I was a makeup artist for like 11, 12 years or something like that, and I loved it. And especially when, my partner, Caglione, and I were together, we had so much fun. I did not grow up as a kid wanting to be a makeup artist. I was interested in monster makeups and stuff. I read Forey Ackerman's, famous monsters of Filmland and stuff like that. And I loved that stuff. But I was always someone who liked to draw and design. And so when I was on stage, and that when you're shooting a movie, there's a lot of, it's hurry up and wait like the Army. There's a lot of waiting because they might be setting up a shot, lighting a shot, getting it just the way they want it. Then they call in first team. And in the meantime, you just do whatever, you read a novel well, for me, I'm on the sound stage. I'm on 8 and 9 with these incredible, the sets were fantastic. I loved the Enterprise D sets. But the other thing you have to remember is that those stages and the whole layout and the skeleton of everything came from Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
It's the same stage, same, because they're not going to, it's less expensive for them to start with what they've got already rather than tear everything down and put up all new lights and electrical and all that stuff. So I would just like crawl every inch of those stages, looking at everything, getting behind walls. You know, the first time I saw a polar motion wheel was like, oh. I couldn't believe this is what makes the moving of the graphics. It was, it was like archaeology too. I behind walls and engineering, I found parts of the engineering from Phase 2. The Phase 2 engineering, pieces of Phase 2 engineering was still there. I found the transporter room door tucked somewhere behind something from Motion Picture with the logo, the Lee Cole logo.
Right, sure.
Still on it. I mean,
the intermix chamber from Voyager's engineering section was from Star Trek The Motion Picture.
That it hasn't, that whole, where you got the levels with the elevators coming down and stuff, that's all from Star Trek The Motion Picture, but they redid it.
Which was amazing. I mean, that was one of the great things. I remember once talking to Mike, and there's a first season Star Trek episode called 11001001 with the Binars. And they reuse, it's a great episode. They reuse Space Dock, from the actual ILM footage from Star Trek 3. And I remember asking Mike, because Mike was telling me that he would say, well, the scale's wrong. He was trying to tell, like, can we... And maybe it was Bob. I think it was Bob Justman that Mike was talking to, and Bob said, "Look, Mike, because they wanted to use the footage and build a dock like that would be outside." And Bob Justman's like, "Do you want to have a space station or not?" And that's where Mike learned that okay, we'll worry about the scale later and like the changing scale of the Klingon bird of prey. It's like, but it was the reusability that made you were able to stretch a budget much further. I mean, and that was the great thing about having all of these shows being made on the Paramount lot, having someone like you and what was the name of the he was on the art department, but he worked on the original series. He was in
John Dwyer?
Yeah, John Dwyer. And he he told me that he was a professional dumpster diver.
Yeah.
That he was always going in, he was looking around and would go diving into whatever dumpsters he could find all over the lot.
While we were doing Trials and Tribulations, Herman had set up a secondary art department to do the movie that was being done at the time. And
I think it was
Insurrection?
Yeah.
Insurrection?
Yeah, because First Contact came out that year. So Insurrection was probably...
Well, they had John Dwyer as a set dresser on Insurrection.
Right.
So he was coming up to the art department. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. We're recreating the original series, and here's John. Here he is. The guy is also like 6'4". He is huge. And it's like, someone once told me that if you had John Dwyer and Gene Roddenberry coming down the corridor, you were like, what do I do? It's like, he's also, gigantic. But so I was... on the light box, I had the plexi pieces where all the jelly bean buttons were going to go on, and I had them all plotted out. And I was mixing. Greg Jean had cast buttons for us from the same molds that were given to him by Jimmy Rugg, who was the effects guy on the original series. So these were the real thing. And my job was to plot them all out, and then I would pick out all the different shapes, mix up a little epoxy, put it on the bottom, and very carefully go to drop it. There's no doing it twice.
Right.
If you miss it, or if it drops out of your hands, if epoxy gets on that shiny plexi, it's over. You need a whole new piece. It's ruined. So I'm, concentrating, and I'm laying these things out. I'm having an amazing time, and I hear this voice come from behind me, but up at about 6'4", that says, "That's just the way we used to do it." And I turned around and it's John Dwyer, and I went crazy. Ask Mike. I couldn't help it. I was like leaping in the air and, whooping and hollering. I was going, it was amazing. And John's like, I better get my tranquilizer gun. But that experience of having John coming in
Yeah.
while we're doing the original series.
Well, I mean, it was, first of all, since you had moved to the art department, you worked on Relics, where you got to make that wedge of the bridge with James Doohan coming back.
Yeah.
So you were there. Did you do Mark Leonard's makeup on Sarek?
You know what? I missed doing his makeup, and that's another story. When I was in makeup, and they knew they were going to bring him back, Mike Westmore says Mark Leonard's going to be in an upcoming show as Sarek, and he's going to come in. Would you take a life cast of his ears so we could do pointy ears for him? And I'm like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And so when Mark Leonard comes in, first of all, he is such a sweet guy, just a darling person.
Yeah.
And we started talking. Now, I know everything about him. I knew what he was up to. I knew he was doing a play with Walter Koenig. And once I started engaging him he just like lit up. He couldn't believe I knew all this. And we just kind of fell in love with each other. And he said, are you going to be doing my makeup? And I said, I actually had to leave for 2 weeks to do something with, I think, Caglione.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I missed getting to do his makeup. And he was so, imagine for me, the idea that Mark Leonard was so disappointed that I wasn't going to do his makeup as Sarek. You know, I had another experience when we did Reunification. The one
Unification, because in Unification, you had Malachi Throne and you had Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
So Malachi Throne from the Menagerie, and then Leonard Nimoy and it was great because they would bring back these actors that were in both series.
Yeah. Well, remember when the 3 Klingons?
Yeah. That was deep. I mean, that was Blood Oath, the second season of Deep Space Nine. I mean, so what's it like? Like, how did you contain? Obviously, people can see you're enthusiastic now, but like when you're,
I didn't contain it. I didn't feel like I had to. Imagine that, being able to go on your favorite show, not watch your favorite show, be in your favorite show,
and work with the people that were on your favorite show, and now you're in the new iteration of it, so you get to talk to. I mean, I couldn't have contained myself.
I didn't contain myself, and I remember I got in. It was still dark. You usually get in; it's still dark. Go up into the makeup trailer, and Patrick Stewart's sitting there in his Romulan makeup, and I'm like, "Oh, good morning, Patrick. You make a handsome Romulan," and he goes, "Oh, thank you, Doug." And then I look over, and there's Malachi getting made up by Mike Westmore in his Romulan makeup. And I go over all excited, and I call him Commodore Mendez. Good morning, Commodore Mendez. And he lit up like a 1,000-watt bulb. And the thing is that because of Barbara Luna, my friendship with Luna, Malachi ended up becoming a part of our circle, and he was here all the time. He's the sweetest, funniest guy. As a matter of fact, he used to do voices for Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. You remember that?
Yeah.
Also with the spy thing, it was like Get Smart, but all with chimpanzees. And so they had all this voice talent, and Malachi was, one of the voices. And at that point, there was really no YouTube, and there was no streaming at that point either. And you couldn't. I had a bootleg copy of Secret Chimp, and Malachi sat on the couch like 2 7-year-old kids, giggling and laughing at Secret Chimp. Anyway, we missed the heck out of Malachi Throne.
I have a story about him. I don't know if I ever told you this. When we were casting Free Enterprise, we wanted to get Star Trek guest actors, including Luna, but that didn't work out, to be in the movie. And the first person we met with was Malachi Throne. And he came in to Mark Altman and I were casting. He came in and he starts talking, and he says, "Listen, I'm not going to be in this movie. It's too crass and it's too R-rated and there's too much sex in it." He said, "But I just wanted to meet you guys because I figured I'd want to know whoever wrote this script."
Wow.
And it was so, like, first of all, we were kind of bummed out, but we're like you. It's like, oh my God, and he was so cool. And we're like, it's Commodore Mendez. But, we didn't want to say that. But he was also such a, like you said, he was a very elegant, very erudite man. And when he told us this, and then he asked if we could give his son a job. But it was so funny.
He told me that he said that he was the poor man's Paul Frees. He says if they couldn't get Paul Frees, they would get me.
But when you were, so like here, not only do you get to see Malachi Throne, and not only you get to see Nimoy, but you guys in the art department, you get to design our first look at Romulus. We've never been to the Romulan homeworld. We've never seen suddenly, and we're seeing, Denise Crosby gets to come back as Sela, and you're seeing, but you guys were creating part of the Star Trek universe that had never been seen before.
Well, when they were developing the Romulans, I was in the makeup department. So I was mostly doing Romulan makeups. Of course, I was well-versed in, I came to the art department completely well-versed in all the sets that they had built.
Right.
I knew everything by heart. Boy, that's a bonus to get someone like that. So I didn't get involved with the Romulans until I got to or in design-wise, till I got to Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay.
Which was great. I did all kinds of, Romulan graphics. I remember we did a Romulan bridge that David Livingston directed. And we love David Livingston. As a matter of fact, he's the guy who put me in uniform for my cameo in the episode I was in, Transfigurations.
Yeah.
He shot this Romulan bridge we did, and it really was a gorgeous bridge. We were all really proud of it. But I remember that I wanted to do something unusual with the panels above, and I found in the lighting department these kind of Art Deco-y lights that we mounted on the Plex, and then I did a graphic that worked with that thing. So we were all excited about that. And then when we saw the show, every shot by David Livingston was up everyone's nose. You never saw the set. You never saw it. Of course, the beauty is that when you're with these people that often, David Livingston can come in the art department and we could all razz him and give him raspberries and what happened, I don't think you could probably do that on a show where you haven't been together for a long time.
Sure.
Yeah. Malachi. He told me a story. He said that he was involved with Star Trek from day one. He was the voice of the Keeper originally, before they changed the voice. Roddenberry offered him Dr. McCoy, the part of Dr. McCoy. And he said that he turned it down because he read a book by Paul Fix. I think he was the doctor on the second pilot, where No Man, which he hardly got to say a word. Mark, the Twin Peaks,
Right.
He was also on the Rifleman. He was the sheriff in the town, and Rifleman was always being upstaged by Chuck Connors. But Malachi said that Paul Fix wrote a book called Third Man Through the Door. And he said that he had always been the third man through the door. And so he had been kind of forgotten. He thought that was the reason. And don't take a job as the third man through the door. So Malachi didn't. He didn't want to be the third man through the door. However, look what DeForest Kelley did with that.
Right. Yeah. And he wasn't even in the opening credits in the first season.
Yeah, that's right. No, McCoy, the casting and the characters, and especially the original series, are just amazing. DeForest Kelley was, one, it was nice to have someone who was a little older than the main two. He brings, the wisdom of youth, and McCoy always was the heart between the three characters.
No, 100%. Now, because I could talk to you about various stories about working on each episode, which I don't want to do because we'd be here for 1,000 years. But one of the things that you did get to see was this transition, slowly, but a transition into digital effects.
Yeah.
And by the time you got up to Enterprise, which that debuted in 2001, so you were really on Star Trek for 11 years before Enterprise even debuted, you moved into digital and you designed the NX-01. How did you begin that transition to digital? And because it was, I mean, obviously it wasn't in your skill set, you had to learn all of that.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? And I think one of the things I've always been inspired by in terms of your story is that you would embrace this new technology. You know, so often, I mean, I remember I was teaching old-time editors how to work on an Avid in the 90s because I had learned how to cut on an Avid, and they were really reluctant to start to use technology, but you didn't. You just embraced all of that. What was that like for you? And how did you start to work in the digital world? Was that in the art department too?
Yeah. The first thing was when the opportunity came to come to the art department, Mike, whose office was up in the TNG art department still, which was the motion picture art department office, same place. He for the first time, I saw Photoshop, Illustrator. Those were the two main programs at the time, Photoshop, Illustrator, and I was blown away. I couldn't believe it, you know, that you could rubber stamp things. And it was so. Mike says he didn't know this. He told me this like in the last year, and I was sure he must have known, but he says he didn't realize it till later that I'd never touched a computer, and that I actually that day went out and bought my first computer, and it was a Mac because at the art department was all Macs at the time. And I had 2 weeks before I had to start, and basically I crammed for 2 weeks without a YouTube.
Wow!
You learn it's amazing what you can learn to do on YouTube. I always look on YouTube first before I call a repair person, you know.
Right.
Sometimes it can be so simple and you save $300, you know. So I crammed for 2 weeks on Illustrator, just using the manuals, which is like the worst way to learn anything, because the people who write those things think, oh, well, you understand everything I'm saying here, like you're one of them, and they leave stuff out, and you know. But I learned it enough to hit the ground running, and I really got good at Adobe Illustrator. I mean, all the illustrations I did for the encyclopedia, and you know, using gradients, and I got really, really, really good at it. I look at some of the stuff now, and I'm like, wow, that's really great. I don't think I could do that today. Also the graphics department, which Mike is, you know, very tech savvy person, and very forward looking, and the future and stuff like that. The graphics department had computers, you know, we all had our own computer. Well, in the beginning on Deep Space Nine, there was one computer in the department, and it was like me, Mike, Denise are all trying to use this computer. We would almost have to book time, and so by season 2. We all had our own. So nobody else in the art department was using computers. Set designers were still using Maylines and T-squares and graphite pencils and stuff. And they looked at us like evil. Evil. You know, like the computer's Satan, you know. And I found that was true of when I went to CG imagery. A lot of people were saying, oh, it always sucks, and I can always tell, and, you know, but people who were in the business, who were making models, physical models,
sure,
computers were evil, evil, evil. And some of them, even if they wanted to, could not get themselves to, I mean, we had Greg Jean in the art department for a few weeks, and we put a computer on his desk. We said, we're all here for you. You would be the perfect person to learn this. And he just couldn't do it. His heart wasn't in it, you know.
He liked to build things.
He liked to build things. And, you know, computers have never been, it's hands-on for him.
Right.
And unfortunately, he wasn't interested really in making that jump. We tried. But for me, when I was working at Dick Smith's, when we were doing The Hunger, a pivotal day for me was we were all having lunch one day, and the mail came, and it was a copy of American Cinematographer with The Last Starfighter on the cover.
Wow, okay.
And it was still, it was game-like looking, which was part of the story, so it didn't matter. But even though this was spaceships and, hard surface objects, and we were doing makeup, I think all of us at that moment knew that eventually this is going to happen with makeup as well. And it did.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean, when ILM was doing those makeups, the digital makeups for like Davy Jones, and that was insane.
Yeah, and makeup has been pretty much from what it used to do has been devastated by CG. You don't make your monsters as puppets anymore. Someone may do it once in a while, but they're always CG. They look amazing. Actually, if you go back and watch some of the old foam latex puppets and things, they're looking puppety at this point because we're so used to seeing.
Right. But there is something, I mean, when you go back and you look at like the movie Pumpkinhead, you had one of the great makeup effects people of all time directing that movie, and makeup effects guys still know how to light latex models. I still love seeing a good latex model.
Yeah, me too. The thing is that, especially then when you had guys, geniuses like Stan Winston.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Stan Winston directed Pumpkin.
Yeah, that was his picture.
Yeah.
When you had people like that, he was directing, he knew how to use that thing. His team was, top notch, and people still believed in. They were still doing rubber creatures then. Oh, you get someone like Jon Favreau, okay, who, because he wants to revisit the old days, that's why Orville had a physical model in the first season.
Right.
Because Favreau wanted to shoot with a physical model, and he was able to convince Seth MacFarlane that would be fun. We'll shoot with a model. When you have someone like that, it'll happen. Like Favreau doing the Baby Yoda puppet.
Right.
If it had been anyone else, it probably would have been CG. But Favreau wants to have the fun of you having a Muppet,
Right.
And it is adorable and sweet, Some people can still get away with doing it these days, but 9 times out of 10, it's really getting hard to beat CG, CG and now AI coming. It's hard to beat them. They look absolutely alive.
So learning digital, I mean, when you moved into deep space, the production of Star Trek started to change. And by the time you got to Voyager, so much of it was done. The space shots were done CG. Yeah. There's only one CG shot of Deep Space Nine in the entire series, and that's the final pullout at the very end of All Good Things. But did you find yourself, were you designing digital spaceships? And had you moved into that realm before Enterprise?
Well, what had happened was that, yes. I think I told you that Mike Lightwave knew who Michael Kuda was, and they gave him a copy. They wanted him to use it. And he just was never breaking the seal, And we used to talk a lot, sit in his office and gab. And I would always pick that Lightwave box up, and there'd be giant robots fighting and spaceships, and like looking at it, and weeks go by. And I also happen to know that, DS9 isn't going to last forever. Maybe I could move sideways into visual effects. That was a thought in my mind.
Okay.
I know all these guys. They're my friends. I love Dan Curry. I love Gary Hutzel. If there's a way for me to get involved with that, that seems like a possibility. I don't think Voyager had a team. The odds of anyone leaving were really remote, So, Mike and I, we almost finish each other's sentences. I pick up the box and I go, "Say, Mike, are you ever?" "No, I don't want to climb the learning curve." I go, "Would you mind if I?" "No, go ahead, take it." So I took the program, I put it on the machine in the office. You still couldn't learn anything on YouTube yet, but there were some videotapes that were being done.
Right, sure.
And Ron Thornton even did a couple of them. And so I grabbed those and I'd go home and I would just sit and watch them for whatever time I had at night.
I should mention that Ron Thornton was doing Babylon 5.
Babylon 5.
And they were using Lightwave.
Yeah, Ron changed everything. Ron he was the groundbreaker that made, computer generated spaceships and stuff. I mean, B5 tends to look computery, but it was so much better than what we had seen already. And so he wanted.
And there was no way they could have done it otherwise. They couldn't use motion control models on their budgets.
No. Well, I mean, the computer made it so much more affordable to do through the roof super stuff, which that's what we did on Battlestar Galactica, man. I mean, we were doing, our friends at ILM were going, how are you guys doing this?
Well, wait, we haven't got there yet. Because I want to get to the NX. Actually, we have a couple of questions from viewers. The first question is, well, it's a comment. A tip gets sent in by Garen Gillum, who says, Doug, thank you for all your amazing work in Star Trek and the entertainment industry. And thank you, Rob. These interviews with Doug are great. And Major Chai Chai says, who is an actual retired Air Force major, says, Doug, it was mentioned you took inspiration for the NX-01 from the P-38, which is a favorite of mine too, as I love twin-tailed aircraft. What other aircraft did you take inspiration from for your design projects?
B-17 for sure. On the ships. I mean, especially if it's an Enterprise, as far as the plumbing and stuff on the nacelles is influenced by the B-17, and it would have to be because Matt Jeffries, the original designer, was a chief engineer on a B-17 during World War II. And I could point out things on it that I know he got the dynamic look from a B-17. There's also parts of the bridge and the teardrop on top. If you frame it just right, it's almost the nose of a B-17, where you've got the bridge would be the upper turret.
Right.
I mean, this is what Matt loved. Matt loved airplanes, and the B-17 was special to him. And you could look at the nacelles and see stuff directly from the B-17 that is on the engines directly.
Well, and the NX-01 is totally a P. I mean, I knew when I first saw your design, I'm like, oh, that's a Lightning. That was, and I loved it for that reason. You even have the little things on top. Those
turbochargers on top.
The turbochargers, yeah.
Yeah, my father was during World War II. He was at an air base just outside of Cambridge called Duxford, which I actually went and visited with him, and it's still there. It's the British Imperial War Museum now. It's intact. That base used to have P-38s, Lightning, a P-47 Thunderbolts, and then eventually the P-51 Mustang. And so the P-38 was so unique looking compared to the other ones with the twin booms, and it was fast. They used to take P-38s, put a glass nose on it, strip it of all its guns, and put a camera in the nose, and it could go and take footage of the ground to bring back. Stripped down, there wasn't a German plane that could catch it. It didn't need guns. I'm like, well, doesn't it need guns? No, because there's no plane can catch it.
Right.
It's that fast, But I mean, and I even had a big P-38 model on the wall behind me while all that was going on.
How did Berman, suddenly, how did you actually get the job? I mean, you had all the illustrators that even the Voyager you can see on many of the reference manuals. It went through a lot of iterations. What was it like for you? How did you get the job? Who gave you the green light to design the NX-01?
Well, I mean, first of all, designing an Enterprise, I never ever thought I would get an opportunity like that.
Because I mean, dude, that's the gold standard. That's that's the dream.
I've said it before. Let's see, Academy Award, design an Enterprise. I don't know. That's a tough choice. I don't know. I mean, even when I was working in the Enterprise, I didn't think I would ever get an opportunity like that. But what happened was that I saw the end of DS9 coming. DS9 was using some CG.
Yep.
I think that
Sacrifice of Angels. Yep.
Ron, Mr. Berman told Ron Thornton, he says, look, we're not throwing away our stock footage. Star Trek has always lived on stock footage. We're not throwing away our stock footage. We spent a lot of money making that stuff. So when your stuff can cut in with our stuff that we already have,
right,
then we'll start using. That's how it happened. Then he did it. He actually did it. So I saw what was happening. I knew the end of DS9 was coming. I thought I could slide sideways. And I started cramming on Lightwave and started, getting better and better. And then one day I was at the computer and I felt this eyes on me. And I turned around and Gary Hutzel was standing there like this. Huh.
And he was a visual effects supervisor on Star Trek.
Yeah, I got Lightwave on my computer. Huh. And a couple of days later, he comes up. I love Gary. And this is exactly the way he said it. I'll never forget it. He says, "Say, do you think a guy like you can make a spaceship for a guy like me?" That's exactly what he said. And I was like, well, yeah, I go, but, I am still new at this. And the guys at Foundation Imaging are like light years beyond me.
Right.
And I'll never forget the next thing he said. He said, and he hadn't been getting along that well with them. He said, I'd rather give an opportunity to someone that I actually like working with. Yeah, that's exactly what he said to me. And I was like, okay.
And he was a really nice guy.
Gary was unbelievable. He really was. I love funny. Funny, there's nothing better than funny. Really, honestly, think about it. What's better than funny? And Gary was really funny. He was a lot like us, and he loved us. We loved him. He always thought of us. If one of the ships was on the stand lit at Image G, call us to come down and see it, So Gary borrowed me from Mike for about a week and a half. And I went over to Image G and I started building a ship. I think it was a Breen ship or something. I didn't know what I was doing. And he didn't either. But it didn't matter because there was a lot of heart went into it. And I just remember that after we were done and I was going back to Paramount, I said, "Gee, Gary, that was really fun. I hope we get a chance to do this again." And he stops and looks at me and he says, "Be careful what you wish for." And so what would happen is that when DS9 ended, I said to Dorothy, Foundation Imaging is looking for artists that are going to be doing a Roughnecks series and with people, characters in it. And she
was
goes,
was that the Starship Troopers series?
Yeah. She says, Ron Thornton's one of my oldest, dearest friends. And I'm like, what? She says, yeah, Ron Thornton's like one of my oldest, dearest friends.
Dorothy was your wife.
Donna, yeah, Dorothy. She said, yeah, you could be sitting in his office tomorrow. I'll call him right now. And she just called Ron up and I was standing in Ron Thornton's office the next day. And I told him, I go, I'm still learning, and he hired me on the spot. It's like I wasn't really unemployed for very long. As a matter of fact, I don't think I was. I think Ron had asked me to come.
Let me ask you that. So it's because we know all this stuff, but so our Foundation Imaging had done Babylon 5 and then they had moved over to Voyager.
Yeah.
You were on Deep Space Nine.
Right.
And there was Voyager was this confluence and Gary was on Star Trek. So how did that work? Like, was there, obviously Gary Hutzel said he didn't like a lot of the guys over there, but how did Foundation take over Voyager and was Image G? How did that work?
Well, what was happening was that Image G was still shooting physical stuff, especially for Deep Space Nine, and Voyager was still doing some of it, Guys like Dan Curry and Gary Hutzel and Mitch Susskind.
Dan was on Next Generation from the very beginning. For those of you, if you look up, Dan Curry created the Batleth for Klingons because he was a martial artist. And so the Batleth was eventually recognized as an official weapon to be used in martial arts training or something like that. I don't know exactly.
Dan, is a martial arts master. So he understands how you use these weapons to disembowel or neuter somebody.
Yeah. But he was the funniest guys. Yeah, he was an effects supervisor, and Gary Hutzel was an effects supervisor. So were you joining the enemy? Were they like, Doug, what are you doing?
No, I think that they were happy I was there because I understood how they worked, and I was kind of
you were the conduit. You were the
cover spy.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
you know. They liked having me there. So Dan and Gary and all the other guys, they used to do everything.
Right.
They'd go to the production meeting, they break down the script, they talk to the producers and the writers, and they hammer out what they think they might want to do. And then when they figure out the shots, and they may do storyboards, Dan used to do storyboards all the time. Once they know that, then you got to get the Teamsters to go upward north over past Valencia, where they have a big warehouse, pick up the model in a wooden crate, put it on the back of a truck, drive it all the way down. Hopefully by the time it gets to Image G, it's still in one piece. Very often you ended up with a model that, since they drove it, it doesn't light up anymore. Now you got to crack it open and try to figure out. I have a video of Gary doing that. And then he would put the model on the stand. They would light it. They would set up the motion control moves. They would film all the passes. They would oversee the compositing. They did everything. All of a sudden, now their job is to, well, they still have to go to the production meeting and kind of knock it out with the producers like they always did. But now they got to drive up to Foundation Imaging or wherever it is and explain what it is we want from them to do.
Right. So you would be the perfect guy.
Oh, yeah, because they trust me, they know me. But often Gary would go and look at what they did, and there were some people there who felt that, well, they had a better idea.
Yeah. No.
And then it ended up being something else. And one of the things I was for Gary while I was still in the art department, because we got along so well, he would call me on the phone just to bitch. I'd have him on the phone just like upset and bitching and I heard a lot of that. I knew that this was, you don't want to like poke Gary Hutzel, he will eventually figure out how to drink your milkshake. Because what happened was that, okay, so I was at Foundation Imaging for 2 years. They put me on Voyager first, and then one day Ron was bringing some people around, and he always stopped at my desk because he liked saying, "This is Doug Drexler, Academy Award winner." He liked doing that. And so, he told those folks that he won an Academy Award for makeup, and they'd be like, "Well, from makeup to this, I mean, that's kind of a stretch, isn't it?" I'm like, "No, not really. I mean, they're doing roughnecks, and there are people there, faces.
Yeah.
That's kind of makeup, sculpting and stuff." And I saw a light, just the same light that went off over Gary's head, same one went off over Ron's head. And after they left, he comes over to my desk and he says, "Walk with me." And we take a little walk. He goes, "Doug, have you ever done a face in a computer before?" And I'm like, "No, Ron, I haven't. I don't have any idea how you would even begin something like that." He says, "I want you to go on Roughnecks for a little while." And so he transferred me to Roughnecks, and I started doing faces and learning about that. And there were a lot of brilliant guys on the show, much better than I am. But the one thing I brought with me was practical experience painting faces.
Right.
I understood texture and painting. You're not just putting a layer of paint on with a little bit of blush. You have to paint it to look like a head cheese, to make it look like maybe it is translucent, because it's not. That kind of surface in a computer, the light just goes bam, hits it. Now you could do light transfusing through things, but back then it wasn't. So I did that for a while, and I had a great time. I eventually went back to Voyager. So I read that they were going to do Enterprise. Of course, I'm talking to Mike and everybody all the time. There's going to be a new show. And I remember John Eves came up to visit. Don't be careful of him if he hasn't seen you in a while, because he'll give you a bear hug that could crush your ribs.
And we should tell people that John Eves was one of the great starship designers. He designed the Enterprise E. So many different ships. I mean, he was the man.
He's amazing, and he's funny, and nothing better than. So he came up to Foundation, almost crushed me, and he says, "Are you coming back?" And I was like, "Well, if I go back, I know Mike would take me back as a graphic designer, but I'm here at Foundation learning this amazing new thing. I think it would be a mistake to go away from this now. And so he was like, oh, he was disappointed. He says, oh, well, I know. John and Herman had been working on designs for the NX. And I mean, John must have done like 25 or 30 different, and they were all good.
Right.
But the thing is that when you have a producer, a writer, generally they're not visual. They can't tell you what it is they want.
Right,
and what
sure.
you often hear is, I don't know what I want, but when I see it, I'll know it. And that's like terrifying to hear those words, because that is like the ultimate slippery slope. And also what really happens is that they will have you doing designs until there's no time left, because they want to see everything.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where Herman really needed to move on to sets, and he needed John to do drawings. And so Mike Okuda said to Herman, Doug is up at Foundation learning how to do CG. You should bring him back as an illustrator, and you could build it in the art department in the computer. And Herman was like, what a good idea. And he called me, basically. He gave me an offer. It was an offer. There was no way I could possibly refuse. I was going to continue to do the CG thing back in the art department, which is really a much more friendly environment than almost anywhere. And so I told Herman, I go, Foundation's been really good to me. I have to give them 2 weeks notice. I have to. And he said, oh, no problem. He says, what time do you get off? I go, I'm usually off at 6, and it takes me about a half an hour to get home. He says, okay, I'll be at your house. So for a couple of weeks, I would come home after a full day at Foundation Imaging, and Herman would be sitting on my front porch waiting for me. And then he would come in, and we'd spend a few hours that night with him sitting behind me, just like batting ideas around, I was exhausted, but imagine how thrilling, really.
And he's such a wonderful man.
Oh, my God, Herman.
It was so much. We recorded, one of my favorite things we did on the Star Trek Blu-rays was at your house, filming the roundtable conversation with the art department with Herman.
It was great.
That was incredible. And going to the art department awards where I cut that video where he got
I love that video.
Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, really. I mean, it was the most well, I've been really lucky. I've gone from one amazing group and an environment to another. I mean, my experience with Mike Westmore, my experience with Dick Smith.
Well, I love this journey that you were on. How you were like constantly moving and learning, and yet you're working on the things that you love. I mean, in terms of an example of what a fan can do, becoming a professional, you're it. Like you're the guy. And then, after you were on Star Trek for what? Did you stay all the way through Enterprise?
Yeah.
So then you jumped on, how did you go from you transitioned from Star Trek, which was legendary, but then you jumped on to Battlestar Galactica, which by all rights probably shouldn't have worked. And it turns out to be one of the finest science fiction shows. I mean, when you talk about Star Trek, Galactica was, I don't think anybody would argue by saying that the miniseries and the 4 seasons of Galactica is some of the finest televised science fiction
absolutely
ever. So,
and it's very connected to Star Trek. First of all, I mean, the new Battlestar, you had writers, and I mean Ron Moore.
Yeah, well, that was the amazing thing, is that you had Ron Moore, who started as a writer on the 3rd season, and he was a fan. He wasn't a professional writer. He made his first sale to Next Gen.
Yeah,
he wrote The Bonding.
Michael Piller had an open door policy, right, where they would take meetings with people who were not.
Yeah, and Ron was on a tour of the sets, and I think slipped his script to Eric Stillwell, if I remember the story.
God, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and then Eric Stillwell, and he writes The Bonding, and they took Ron to Lucy's El Adobe for lunch or something, and they asked him if he had. They said, and as Ron put it, they asked him. He goes, "Yeah, well, we're looking for a Romulan story," and Ron said, "Oh, I have a Romulan story," even though he didn't have a Romulan story. He wasn't going to say. He's like, "Sure, I do," and he was a big fan, and of course, he wrote Sins of the Father and created the whole Klingon arc and really changed.
He did with Klingons.
Amazing. So how did then you've got. How did you go from you after doing a starship for Star Trek? I mean, where do you go? You go to Battlestar Galactica. So,
Well, I mean, I was having a good time on Enterprise, of course. It was like I was home again.
and you were there. Were you there? Did you stay? Were you there for the 4th season? So you were there the whole time.
The whole time.
So you got to go from seeing the original Enterprise bridge. You made a wedge of that for Relics. Then for the 30th anniversary of Star Trek, you get to do Troubles and Tribulations.
Right.
And then you got to go to Enterprise and do the 2-part In a Mirror Darkly, where we get the Defiant, and you go full on. You've got Tholians. You've got, I mean, so you really, and you designed an Enterprise. So I don't think you could have had a better going from like that's the most. I couldn't have. My head would have exploded.
Well, I mean, it's like it's one thing to go to Star Trek and be a makeup artist the whole time,
right?
But when you're on Star Trek and you do makeup, and then you do graphics, and then you do illustration, and then you get involved in visual effects, that's like I mean, I gorged myself basically, and there was no way that I couldn't not do that. I had to. Because I loved all of it so much, and it was right here, right in front of me, being done by people who were like my family, pretty much. So moving sideways on Star Trek was pretty easy, you know. It's mind numbing. So anyway, I think I told you that. How do you tell if your show is canceled or going to be canceled?
Right.
You know, people come in and start measuring it.
Yeah, they measure for the next people. For the next people that are going to show them.
This isn't good. So when we learned that the show was canceled, and of course we didn't find out from the front office, we found out on the internet. And I remember driving home, and my career is passing, reviewing everything in my head, and I'm thinking, wow, I have been lucky. I probably have used up all my luck. There can't be any more luck. They can't. And I'm thinking I may never work again. It's possible.
Can I interject and ask you, so you've worked on Star Trek. They've had this incredible run, 25 seasons of television over 18 years was the Berman era of Trek. You were there for so much of it. But when something like this ends in Hollywood, and a lot of people don't get this, there's no fireworks. You know, they might have a season-ending party or something, but you get so invested in this, and it's part of your psyche and who and what you are. And then one day it's just over. You know, there's no, like, you don't get to go down a long hill. I mean, you might know it's coming, but then that last day is your last day. And like you were just alluding to, for you, how did you feel as a fan, having gone through this whole, and you get to the experience where, okay, Star Trek is now coming to an end. It's it. That's it. And you said your luck was running out, but how did you feel about Star Trek when it was all said and done? You're leaving this franchise. You've made this. You're a kid in New York going to the Federation Trading Post for the first time, and you get a job. And now in the 70s, now it's 2005. It's the 21st century. You've had this incredible Star Trek experience. It's probably never going to come around again. Where did that leave you? Where's the kid that's obviously still inside you right now? How did that kid feel knowing that Trek was over?
Well, I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that gets depressed. I almost never depressed. Only when I was younger, before I learned how to work my brain. I was sad.
There was one other time you were depressed.
Well, yeah.
But you know, we don't have to get into that. Yeah, but you got through it, man. You got through it.
Yeah, I got through it, and I've kind of reinvented my happiness, you know.
Well, that was I wanted to get to that at the end of this, because that was an amazing thing to watch as well. But so you reinventing your happiness, which is spectacular. That's still going strong, I would assume. Yeah. So, but at the time, like, Star Trek is done. What were you thinking about Star Trek? Like, did you ever cry? Because I would have cried.
No, I didn't. I didn't cry. As a matter of fact, I rarely. It's only in my later years that I've I went for years and years when I was younger, and I cried. Almost nothing made me cry. Even if somebody died, I wouldn't
Even
cry.
the end of Star Trek 2? Come on.
I
When
was
Shatner
very
gets choked up, his was
very
the most
angry.
human. That was the first time I cried in a movie theater.
I know. I didn't cry, although some lady who sitting next to me grabbed my arm as Spock was dying. I didn't even know who she was. But as I've gotten older, I cry all the time now. I cry at Star Trek original series Star Trek episodes that never made me cry. Metamorphosis makes me cry.
Scott Mansell, love that. Hear that.
I'm telling you, that's my favorite. It used to be City, but as I got older, the emotions in Metamorphosis and what you learn about life, and Zephyr Cochrane, when he knows he's going to age, and so is she. He says, I think that maybe that's one of the more wonderful things about being human is getting older.
No, it's and what a great looking episode that is.
Oh my God, it's beautiful, and the things that they did, like with smoke drifting through the atmosphere, and it was oh my God, that show. I would love to do. They keep trying to reinvent that old period. I would do those shows if I was gonna spin off of the original series. I would do the original series, but just turn the screw into a little sleeker and more expensive, but not change that era. I love the way it looks.
Well, yeah. They could have done that, and it's don't get me started because I'll go off on a rant if we talk about modern Star Trek. But I want to keep you back to this. So Enterprise is done, and because you're about to talk about luck and moving in because you went to a show that arguably transcended the genre in which it was in, and Battlestar Galactica became one of the great TV. Not that we don't love Star Trek, but Galactica had a lot going against it. Battlestar Galactica, the original, pardon my French, but was never great.
Well, you can't watch it now. I mean, when I went to Galactica, I said, I watched it when it was originally on. I'm going to get the series. I'm going to watch it all and know every bit of it. And it was like I could barely go like 3 episodes. It was really hard to watch. It's not like the original Star Trek. It really holds up. I mean, the stories.
It was the writing and the characters.
Yeah. I'm going home thinking, well, Gary had been in touch with me, and for like a couple of years before BSG, he was working towards going to Ron Moore and trying to land Battlestar Galactica, and he had been in touch with me, asking me for opinions of who he might get to do this or that, and he was trying to tempt me away from Enterprise. And I was like, Gary, I want to work with you, but Enterprise could go for 7 years. I can't just walk away from 7 years of work. I can't. And he'd be disappointed, And so he did season 1 of Battlestar Galactica while we were doing the final season of Enterprise. It was airing. We were watching it. And I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
The show was unbelievable. And Gary has taken the space stuff, which was getting pretty creaky, ship flies from left to right and stuff like that, and doing stuff like we never saw before. Also, it was brilliant to decide for the space scenes to shoot it the way Steve McNutt, the DP, was shooting the interiors.
Yeah.
He was shooting it documentary style, handheld, snap
and
zooms.
those snap zooms into incredible.
Star Trek's camera is the eye of God. It knows where everything's going.
Right.
On Galactica, the camera is motivated by the action. The camera's looking over here. There's an explosion. Camera goes like this, finds it, and snap zooms in.
Yeah.
It's like he always jokes that there's some poor slob in a spacesuit, shooting this stuff, and he's reacting to what's happening around him. That's the way. That's the style, And I was just so freaking impressed. And plus, I was becoming a big fan of the show.
Sure.
I mean, those actors. Oh my God, Edward James Olmos. Katie Sackhoff, Mary McDonald. There were mind-blowing scenes. There was an episode, it was first season with Starbuck. Not to get off the thing here, but Adama finds out that she passed his son to be a fighter jock, and he wasn't ready. She did it because it was her boyfriend. She didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
He gets killed. when Adama finds out, he's livid. His blood is boiling, and he says, "Leave here now while you still can." And she's crying because she loves him. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. She leaves in tears, and she goes out on a mission. She gets into a dogfight with a Cylon. They collide. They crash on a planet together. She finds the Cylon Raider and basically cuts it open, gets inside, figures out how to fly it. And it's an amazing episode. It's totally amazing. And back on Galactica, we're like, we can't find her. We're going to have to leave without her. And so she gets back just in time. And Apollo meets her, and he's like, wow, this Raider's acted really weird. And then on the bottom, she's painted Starbuck. There's a scene in the sickbay. I hope I can say this without crying. See, I've become a big crybaby. There's a scene in sickbay where Adama comes in, and she's still afraid because she knows what she did.
Right.
And he comes in and he kisses her. Kisses her on the forehead. It's forgetting me right now. I'll never forget that. Those actors and the stories. So anyway, what happened was that I drive home, I get home, Dorothy opens the front door and she says, there's a message from Gary Hutzel. And I'm like, oh my God.
So the day you're leaving Star Trek, you're driving home.
It was just like between DS9 and, Foundation. I called him up and he said, I heard about Enterprise. And I said, yeah. And he goes, but every cloud has a silver lining. And that's when he invited me. I remember Dorothy was so amazing. There's some partners who would be mad if you had to go away for a couple of months or be gone weeks at a time, because I had to go to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And Dorothy was like, go get him, Tiger. And I remember flying to Vancouver, and I found in my bag a note that said, have fun storming the castle.
So how was that whole experience? I mean, Galactica, the groundbreaking effects, and they just keep getting bigger. I mean, you get to like Exodus Part 2, and you've got the Battlestar Galactica falling. Yeah, that was the most. That might be the single greatest effect shot in all of television history.
That scene is amazing. And I remember we were still in the beginning. We were a small team, and we started pulling in really brilliant people who. See, in the beginning, Gary wanted me to be his CG supervisor. And he said, my plan is we're going to take a couple of shots, and then we're going to do a few more and a few more. And I remember the first show where we did like the lion's share of the shots was Scar.
Right.
And
the Scar, the evil, the gunfighter Cylon ship.
Yeah. It's kind of a Frankenstein as well, when I heard how many shots we had to do, and I think it wasn't that many, it was maybe 11, because later on we'd do like 1,200 shots for like blood and chrome. I was shitting myself, but we did it, and it's Gary's leadership, and he knows who to bring in to, he knows who his people are, I mean, we were always connected from the very beginning. He put up with a lot because I had to learn a lot of stuff to keep up with him, but it was a fantastic experience. And the BSG, it was at Vancouver Film Studios. Boy, I'll never forget flying up there and how scared I was. I didn't know whether I could do it. Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember it's always raining in Vancouver. I'm sitting outside the studio in a car, haven't gone in yet. And I'm looking at it for the first time, and I'm saying to myself, as soon as you drive through that gate, it's game on. And just driving through that gate is scary. I don't want to let Gary down, for one thing. That was my main thing. You're taking a chance on me. I don't want to let you down, Well,
one of the things that you did was, I mean, you really did push, even though CG, you're pushing, like you said, Star Trek had a very distinct style of visual effects work, and Galactica really changed the game.
Totally.
In terms of and even the design work, the design of like the Cylon base stars. I know that had already been established and stuff, but when you got to like the resurrection ships and things, those were not easy things to do. Like you were really pushing the limits and the amount of some of those space battles at the end when you get to the final season 4 and the last episodes. There's an insane workload of effects.
Well, here's the thing. It was possible because of this paradigm that Gary set up. First, he wanted to take over doing everything, which we did. It was to the advantage of Ron Moore and David Icke to let Gary build this in-house effects unit that had its own rendering machines and some computers. We brought it because, and what Gary told them is, it will be the sky is the limit. Because working with Zoic did the whole first season and some of the second season. You see, the thing about Star Trek is exactly the script. You can't even change a word without Rick Berman coming down the stage.
Right.
But it's the opposite because Ron Moore had been through all of that. Galactica was malleable. It could totally change in the middle. I mean, when they start editing, the editor goes, hey, look what happens when I put Act 3 where Act 2 is. It's now something we never thought of, which is amazing because it allows for bursts of inspiration. However, visual effects is at the very end of the pipeline. So that means every time they change something, and it's all compacting onto us. And if a change like that happened and you had to go to Zoic and say, these shots all have to change to make it work now. They get out their calculator.
Yep. And then it's like,
oh my God. And first of all, it's glacial. You tell them what you want. It's going to be a day and a half, 2 days before they review it and get with their numbers people and decide what it's going to cost you to do this. And it could be a couple of days go by. The plan was to make the visual effects department just like the art department, part of production. We all got a weekly paycheck, but there was no additional fees past that.
Right, sure.
No matter how big the show was. And Gary told the writers, sky's the limit, write whatever you want. We'll figure out a way to do it. And there were plenty of times where we slept on the floor. And, you'd have dinner.
Did that matter to you? I bet you didn't care.
I didn't care. I didn't care at all. It was another situation where I was in this amazing situation, really. Doing something that's cutting edge for the day. Actually, still, you look at those Galacticas today and those visual effects, they are still amazing. They're amazing. Gary has a fantastic eye. Not only can he do a shot in light wave, and light it. He was actually a modeler, but when it came to setting up a shot, lighting the shot, taking into composite, sweetening all the different layers, he could do it all, So I learned huge amounts from Gary, and he learned things from me too. We had a fantastic friendship and relationship, and no matter how crazy things got, Gary can make you laugh.
Yeah.
It's like MASH. You know how the more insane things get, the funnier things can become?
Yeah.
That's what would happen to us. The sillier, wackier, more desperate things were, the more we laughed.
Do you think, you talked a lot about how the camera work, the live action camera work informed, and that documentary style informed the effects, and like Zoic started doing some of that stuff with Firefly.
Yeah.
And then they brought it, Galactica was the perfect example. Do you think that also helped the fact that snap zooms and things like that were able, not necessarily to hide, there he is, not necessarily able to hide deficiencies, but one of the things that I loved about Galactica was this overall style of the whole show gave it a timeless quality. You go back and you look at Last Starfighter, obviously that was the very early ages, and then Babylon 5 was sort of an extension of that, and Star Trek. especially when you saw it, you could get into the high definition of it all, and the Next Generation was restored. You saw how great the model work photography was. But do you think that Galactica was sort of the perfect synthesis of effects and live action because it worked so well in tandem? And I think that's part of the reason it holds up so well when you watch it.
There is no disconnect from the exterior to the interior. And usually with these shows, now, Next Gen did a great job of that. And I thought the original series stuff, I thought that it matched with the interior. You know, for some reason it integrated. Yeah, there's shots that are, you know, that are dodgy today, you know, like the Enterprise in the atmosphere and, you know, Tomorrow's Yesterday. But those shots were more homogeneous with the show.
Right.
Galactica is completely homogeneous with the exterior and the interior. It doesn't yank you out. Now, I don't want to criticize people, but say, for instance, the Star Trek remasters of the original series.
Yes.
I can't watch the remasters. They rip me out of the show. The interiors and the exteriors don't match.
Yeah, and so you know what, though? I think it's, just to speak in their defense, it was very uneven. When you go back and you watch it, some things are great. Like look, I like in Court Martial where you know where the ion pod is, you know, that Ben Finney was supposedly in. They added, or they would put a few people in a matte painting or something like that. But like the effect shots of the Enterprise flying, or the Romulan bird of prey and Balance of Terror, it was all over the place. So they needed they need somebody who was a film director or director to come in, and when you've just got effects people, they're thinking of effects only, but not about the outgoing and the incoming shots. They're not the integration of it all.
I mean, if you have someone at the head like a Gary Hutzel, it would have been totally different.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, we were in line to do that. We were in line to spearhead the remasters. But Paramount decided, well, why are we going outside? We've got CBS Digital now.
Yeah.
Let's do it in-house, which was a shame. I would love to have seen what we would have done.
I know. And they did, to be fair. I mean, working with them, getting the remastering of TNG, they did such a wonderful job.
No, they're great.
But they
you need someone who has a very strong visual sense of what the show. Otherwise, would you say Battlestar Galactica was all over the place? It wasn't. It felt like the same thing all the way through. You know.
No, you mean the remake? Yeah, of course. That's one of the things about that show. I mean, it holds together. You watch it now. I think it's never going to date. It will be a timeless show.
The great thing about the Next Generation remaster was that they really didn't need any CG shots.
Right.
They filled in some things here, you know. Here,
I mean, like the Silicon Avatar, which was like built in a video toaster. But what Mike and Denise did that was so brilliant was, no, we're going to keep the shots the same. We're not going to redesign the Silicon Avatar. We'll use digital effects, but we want to make it look like the Silicon Avatar from the original.
Which didn't happen with the original series remaster. For me, if I was in charge of it, and I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here, but I would not have let them do any shots that you couldn't do with a dolly on a track.
I totally agree with you. That's the way to do it.
Because then it becomes the two parts. One's done in the 60s and another one is done.
Well, and we saw that with the Star Wars special editions in '97. I mean, the insert shots don't fit with the rest of the movie. And
when I did effects for Star Trek Continues, I think I did maybe the first 4 shows. I only did shots the way they could have done them then.
Well, that's why that show looks so good.
You know, well,
it was incredible. So Galactica. Now, you also found yourself working on the 3rd season of the Orville.
Yeah.
Which was kind of taking everything you know on something new, but everything new is old, or everything old is new again. The Orville had that I mean, obviously, we got Seth MacFarlane involved with the inside the writers' room piece we did because he has an insane encyclopedic mind about Trek, and then basically did his own show. How did you get involved with the third season of the Orville?
Well, actually, I think in the second season, I think the girl who was the graphic designer got married and was going to have a baby. So she was leaving the show. Now, Robert Strohmeyer, the art director, had worked with Jeff Mandel on something before that.
All the way back to the Star Wars, the Federation Training Post in New York.
Training Post. And he called Jeff to see if he was available. And Jeff wasn't available. And he says, but I got the guy for you. I go, his name is Doug Drexler, and you can't get anybody better. You know, he's who you want. And so Robert called me, and I went down to 20th Century Fox, which is a little haul for me, but worth it. And I had a meeting with Stephen Lineweaver. What a great name for a production designer. Stephen Lineweaver. I'm like, is that really your name? and Robert. And had a meeting with them that lasted about 45 minutes. And, you know, we were telling jokes before long. You know, we were having a good time. And Robert said to me, he goes, you know, I don't usually do this after a first meeting. He goes, but if you want the job, it's yours. And so I had the job. The thing about Robert and Stephen is that they're not geeks, you know. They never heard of me before. And of course they eventually learned, you know, what my experience was, aside from what Jeff told them and the stuff I showed them from my portfolio, you know.
Right.
But it's like in the same way that I came into Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and stuff with a lot of street cred, my time on Star Trek didn't really mean that much.
Right.
You know what I mean? I had to earn my street cred while I was there.
Sure.
So in the beginning, it was a little bit having to prove myself. And it happened. It was organic the way it happened. I mean, first of all, Robert and I really got along great right away. There were a couple of things going on. I hadn't watched the show before I got the job.
Okay.
Because I felt like they were picking over our bones. You know? And like, picking over our bones. And so I watched it with Dorothy, and I liked the show. There were things that I was like, really was visually. I'm like, wow, look at the back of the bridge. There's nothing. I go, I thought it looked like a favorite shoe store. Dorothy said that. She says it looks like a favorite shoe store. She wasn't being mean, but
sure.
There really was nothing back there but carpeted wall. And in a show like this, you're either looking at the captain or you're looking at the viewing screen. And all the cool stuff was on the sides. And I just remember thinking, wow, what I could do with that. And then the next thing is when they got to the hangar bay, the graphics on the floor. See, for me, those graphics have to tell a story. You want your audience to look at that and go, okay, that's an elevator, that you know, that's this, and figure out how it works, that there's actually hangar bay operations. The thing about Star Trek, you can look at it and take it apart. That's what a lot of people love.
That's what we love. That's something modern Star Trek doesn't have a clue about.
Well, the people who are doing the show don't understand that it's important. I looked at the hangar, and the one thing I saw was there was a disc in the middle, which I knew was influenced by the original series Hangar Bay, where there's a turntable.
Yeah.
They never showed a turntable, but for the most part, a lot of it for me, who lives this stuff, was science fiction design. The graphics were science fiction. They weren't aircraft logic or Navy logic. And I remember looking at that going, oh my God, what I could do with that. So when I got there, it turned out that Stephen and Robert wanted me to be involved with redoing the back of the bridge. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I want to do. And they had already done a few designs before I got there, which I considered to be science fiction designs. Like the wall, that arch over there on the back wall had like hexagonal lit up patterns on it. To me, that's like science fiction. I had a completely different idea about the way I would do it. And, but since they had these designs and I was disappointed, Steven said, we want you to look at what the illustrator has done and figure out how to make a test of this using the sign shop and plexi and lights and stuff like that. So I was like, still happy to do it. Did it, put it together. It looked like what I expected. You wouldn't look at it and say, oh, okay, I know what this does just by looking at it. It was like, well, okay, this is kind of Las Vegas-y. And we took the test that I set up. It was a box, about 3 feet by 3 feet, and took it down to stage. And Seth came down and looked at it. And that's basically what he said. He says, look like Las Vegas. So Steven came to my desk afterwards, and he was explaining to me another approach. I had it in my head already. He was explaining to me another approach he wanted to try. And I have to say that Steven is really an interesting guy. He's almost on a different plane. And he can speak and explain things in ways that I'll get lost listening to him. And of course, I've been around for a while, and I'm not afraid to say I don't understand. When you're younger, you tend to go, yes, I understand, and then try to figure it out later, because you don't want to act like you don't understand. Right. At this point in my life, I don't care that, it doesn't bother me. I'll let you know. And Steven says to me, so explains the thing, and I'm getting lost already. And he says, you know what I mean? And I said, Steven, I'm a little slow. I do not know what you mean. And I saw this look of exasperation come over him. Then he stopped and looked calm for a second and just said, okay. He says, just do what you think is right. And that was like the beginning there,
Right.
I did like 4 different things that, what, I'm sure you've seen it. It looks like it functions now. It looks like it, to me, it was a big data manifold, and I knew what everything did.
Right. But that's important. That's something I think that not a lot of people think about anymore. Especially when especially with Star Trek, one of the things that I don't think is understood, and what Star Trek has that no other TV show has, is you have manuals and posters and cutaway drawings and things that show, I think one of the most, as far as cinema is concerned, the cutaway drawing of the Enterprise that was published and put out as a poster for Star Trek The Motion Picture, Jeffrey Kimball's drawing, where it showed the entire interior of the ship and it showed you where engineering was. This was vitally important because it informed the stories they would, obviously the Star Trek movies, they didn't have to tell the stories, but once you knew what the internal design of the ship was, you could use it to inform your storytelling. You could be hey, we can put something could happen here, or there's damage here.
How many stories came out of the encyclopedia and the tech manual?
Unbelievable. And you look at modern Star Trek, and when you get to the Discovery and you see that there's like a roller coaster where the turbo lifts are supposed to be going and people are flying there's all this empty space. It was so, one of the things that made me so angry is you could tell that the people working on this show had no clue about the stories that were being told. There was no rational design decisions being made. And when something like that, when nobody cares about the production design or trying to make something in a science fiction world believable, they don't care about anything else either. They don't care about their stories. They don't care about their characters. And it was insulting after watching a show that from 1966 to 2005, so much thought was put in, especially by people like yourself, to create a believable world. Matt Jeffries.
We had so many. We had, among the fans, you had JPL, all of JPL. Love Star Trek. I remember I was over there one day. It was right after the JJ movie came out, and when they asked me if I saw it, and I went off on the bridge. I'm like, I can't figure out anything. What on a good bridge like on Picard, you can look at every station. If you're a fan, you can look at that station and go, I know that's the engineering station.
Right.
I know that that's science. I can tell just by looking at it. And I feel like if I get behind this helm, I could fly the damn ship because it's following all the rules. It's all here, you know?
Yeah.
If you do just a willy-nilly sci-fi design that's flashy, those people are going to feel butthurt. I don't blame them because it pisses the hell out of me.
Well, also, but the audience doesn't feel, my favorite word, verisimilitude. They don't feel what you're watching has been thought out. And they might not be able to articulate it, but they can feel it.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it was always so interesting. Like, we know that Harrison Ford, Han Solo knows how to fly the Millennium Falcon because he knows what levers to push, and something happened and the design worked all. And we know that we know that Sulu or Data or whomever can fly the Enterprise. And you can see, and part of the thought, well, the lack of thought in modern Star Trek especially, I think has really hampered the ability. That's why it doesn't capture the imagination of the audience the way it used to.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't believe in the ship is, the story's all about science and technology, you know.
Right.
And if you're just like, you know, fluffing it off, listen, if you read, one of the things as a kid that I read and made a big, you know, mark on me was in The Making of Star Trek, where Gene Roddenberry talks about the believability factor.
Yeah.
And that you have to be consistent so that people believe in the ship. You know, I mean, Mike and I always felt that if you don't believe in the ship, you're not going to believe in anything else.
Right, exactly.
You know,
we have a couple of. This is a great question. First of all, our friend Irene Jobson is back. She left watching the channel for a while, but she's back, and she says, "Hey, Castle Grayskull, the lovely Castle Grayskull, all the way in Montreal, says, can Mr. Drexler do my makeup? Hi from Canada." And then Major Chai Chai has a great question. She says, "What was the most, what was the most exasperating design or project that you did, the kind that made you want to throw things, and how did you get through it?" Was there anything like that?
I mean, when you say exasperating, you mean like they're not letting you do what you want to do?
Yeah, whatever, or maybe something just wasn't working.
Well, I mean, that happens. The thing is that if you're in design long enough on a show like this, you know that, you know, 90% of what you do isn't going to work. I mean, I that's how you get to that point, by doing everything, letting it all fall apart, you know, and that it doesn't work. There's no such thing really as a failure. You know what I mean? Nothing is lost. If you do it 3 different ways and it's not working, well, you could sure as shooting 10% of each one of those things, it's going to find its way into the solution.
Sure.
You know, so it's a process. Gary always used to say that it's a process, you know, and you have to, and you have to go through that process and not get upset, because this is all a part of it. Failure, there is no such thing. But that is a part of it. And if you don't, once in a while, look, when I did the Enterprise J, and I knew that we're really going out on a limb here because no one knows. I mean, we've been doing the future now for the last 2 decades. Where do you go with this? Rick Berman picked the design. No notes. That was it, right out of the gate.
The Enterprise J is pretty dope, though. It's developed its own, and I've got the XL diecast version of it. I love so, you know, you had the refit of the NX-01. So
yeah, I mean, I think the J, and I just recorded something with Jason about the J, that there were certain rules that I set for that. One is that people absolutely must tell me that it's stupid when they see it, because if they don't, I failed. Because if it fits right in, it's not the future. It can't fit into what we have already.
Right. And it's weird, but I love it. I love there's something about it that I love.
Very sculptural, and it is thought out. But I made sure to touch on things that I knew made the original ship so amazing and such a success. And that is, when I was at the Federation Trading Post in New York, and Star Trek was, not many people even, you know, watched it. Someone would come in with their friend who was a big fan, and kind of turning their nose up at it. And then it would always go over to where we had pictures of the Enterprise on the wall and talk about what a dumb design. It's so stupid. Don't they care about physics or anything? Look at those nacelle struts. They're so spindly. I mean, come on, really? How stupid is that? And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's two kinds of thoughts here. You can either come at it like everything's dumb and just say that it's stupid, or you could use your imagination and say, well, evidently, and have faith, evidently, they're so far in the future, they have technologies and materials that we don't have no idea about. And when I look at those struts on the old show, that tells me how advanced the ship is, not that it's dumb.
Right, exactly. And like the warp bubble that's created by the nacelles and the design of it all worked. The same thing. I always thought as a kid, what's funny to me is when you see those things, I think that's a mode of thinking. Like one of the things about Star Trek, especially when I was a kid, I would read those Best of Trek compilations, and there was Leslie Thompson would write Star Trek Mysteries Solved, and things that were inconsistent, like the United Earth Space Probe Agency as opposed to the United Federation of Planets, would figure out how those two things work together, and you incorporated it into your headcanon of Star Trek. No one ever said that it was inconsistent. In your mind, you figured out how to make it consistent. You know, how to. So when you looked at different designs, that was just how warp drives work.
Yeah, that's half the fun. Is working it out, making it work.
You brought up Star Trek Continues, which I think, for those of you who don't know, there's 11 episodes of a fan-produced series called Star Trek Continues that is generally considered to be the best fan-produced anything. And it really feels like the original series. Obviously, they don't have the cast, but the cast was actually pretty good. And 1001 Johnny asks a question, Mr. Drexler, if you don't mind, did you interact with the cast of Star Trek Continues while working on it? Did Vic Mignogna give you much direction, or did he mostly trust your input? Also, since the main three started out as voice actors, were they always talking about anime on the set? 1001 Johnny loves Japanese animation.
Oh, well, yes, I mean, I knew all of them, and I wasn't on stage when they were shooting those, but, I ended up hanging out with, a lot of them. And, are friends of mine. Vic worked at getting me to do it. I had decided I didn't want to do any more fan films. I'm done.
Right.
Because, you're working for free, and then the same thing happened with me eventually on Star Trek Continues. For the first 3 episodes, whatever I did, it was pretty much a honeymoon. I told Vic, I said, the only reason I will do this is because I get to do it the way I want to do it. And it was like, sounds good. And so it basically got to do just the way I thought it should be. But by the last episode or so that I did, he started art directing me and getting very, micromanaging. And I'm like, you're forgetting what I said in the beginning.
Yeah.
To make it worthwhile. He says, I'm the producer of the show.
Yeah.
Can I have it my way? How can I have it my way? I go, when you start paying me.
Right.
If you start paying me, I'll do anything you want. But the cost to do the show is I get to do it the way I want to do it. So, after the honeymoon was over and he started art directing me, and
sure,
we just had this one meeting, and I said, we're done.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? He says, I said, I'm done. And so that was, it wasn't worth it to me if I'm going to be remote controlled. I don't want to be remote controlled for free.
Right.
You want to pay me? I'm happy to be your, robot commando,
Totally. Tom Jr. Jackson, who's our moderator, who's been a member of this channel for 60 months. That's crazy. He's talking about, we normally do a Sunday show and our friend Dieter's not here. He says, fantastic episode with great stories, Doug, and information. Thanks for coming on the show. And Castle Grayskull from Montreal asks, she says, I love birds. Who is that? You introduced him on the last show, but you didn't do it yet on this show.
It's Beaky Boy. Beaker, say hi to everybody at home. I've been with him for 43 years now, which is amazing, right? You know
Amazing.
how you fall in love with a cat or a dog over 10 or 12 years? Try 43 years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and you become so connected. He's like my homunculus.
Well, I wanted, before we jump into the last thing, I wanted to touch on something we touched on earlier. You know, I knew your wife, Dorothy, and she was one of the most amazing, coolest ladies. Her last name was actually Dorothy Duder, and I used to call her the Duder. She was the best. And, you know, unfortunately, you did lose her, and you were not in a great place after that happened, understandably so. But you did. Like, you talk about the luck was not just professionally. The luck was also you met someone else and you found love again. And how did that work out? And what advice can you give for anybody that might need to know how to get through that experience? Because you did it.
You know, I can't even explain what it was like. Dorothy was 32 years of perfect. You know, we never had an argument. I met her, I hired her, Caglione and I hired her on Dick Tracy. She worked with us on Dick Tracy. And I found out.
So shenanigans in the workplace. Is that what you're saying?
No, shenanigans didn't start between us
until good.
3 years after. 3 years later. I treated her like my sister. And I knew she was cute and everything, you know, but I wasn't supposed to be. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Wait a minute. If I do say so myself, she wasn't just cute.
She was hot.
She was hot. I'm just saying. I just want to point that out.
She was a girl that I thought would never look twice at me, you know. I thought she was, you know, above my pay grade, a league of her own. You know, but the thing was that getting to know her and being her buddy, you know, we were in tough situations. She took care of us, looked after us. If we needed something, it was there. She was funny. Dorothy was funny as hell, and confident. And like I said, I never thought about. I knew she was gorgeous, but I never considered, you know, us dating. And it wasn't until I think it was 3 years before I was like, well, there's this amazing girl right here in front of me, you know. And I found out, first of all, she was an incredible cook. She would invite a bunch of us over to the house, and it would be like real napkins, you know. No Fritos with squeezed cheese, you know. I mean, we're talking like dinners for heads of state.
Yeah.
And so I found out how amazing she was. And when we first started, oh my God, now I'm remembering. I had been going to Vince's gym since I got out here. It was a gym I always wanted to go to. Vince was, you could look him up, Vince Gironda. He was like one of the all-time great old-time bodybuilders. And he had this little gym in Studio City that was like a dump. It was, people would walk in, take a look, turn around and leave. It was like, you know, a dungeon. No air conditioning in the summer, no heat in the winter. I desperately wanted to go there. And so I did. And I learned a lot from Vince. And I had improved myself. I mean, you know, I'm 73 years old now, and I can't work out like I did when I was in my 40s and stuff. But I put on 30 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, man, you were always in great shape.
It was a game, you know, that I really enjoyed learning how to, you know, work it. But anyway, at that age, you're starting to get soft. And I know.
Soft. I'm too soft.
And Dorothy was now going, because when I first met her, she said, well, I don't do the E word. And I'm like, the E word? She goes, exercise. So I'm like, oh, she doesn't want to do that kind of, I'm not trying to talk her into it, but eventually after a number of years, she finally came to me and said, I want you to introduce me to Vince's gym. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought I would have heard that. And she realized that she was starting to get soft and, and she was seeing me getting stronger. So I took her to Vince's. I set her up with a trainer. It was actually, R.G. Armstrong, the actor?
Yeah.
It was his son, Wynn Armstrong, who I knew was an awesome guy. I said, you should have a trainer at first to just show you the ropes and how to do everything. And I figured, Vince's was dirty and dark, and there were like bugs there that can move 50-pound plates around, And I'm thinking, she's not going to last 2 weeks at Vince's gym. Oh my God. She owned it. She owned it. And Vince loved her. And everybody
She got
loved
buff
her.
too.
And she eventually got her picture on the wall. I have my picture on the wall. So that's where I started noticing her, because she was wearing like a bare midriff with a sports bra and tight workout pants. And I'm going, wow, she's looking really good. And one night I did something that would probably land me in jail today.
Uh-oh.
She was doing like tricep pushdowns and she was glistening and everything. And I walked up. Of course, we had known each other for like 3 years or so now. And we hugged and, and so I came up behind her and I ran my hand down her back and kind of snapped over the back of her bra and came down the small of her back. And she went, oh.
Me too, dude. You're going to get me too'd.
No, not from Dorothy, because I'll tell you, later on, I said to her after we'd been, I said, I could have gotten a lot of trouble for that little bit of monkey business I did there that night. She said, you didn't hear me complaining.
God bless her. That's why she was the dude.
So that night I went home and thought about that. And I'm thinking, I'll bet you she's thinking about that too.
You guys were great. You guys were such a great couple, but unfortunately we lost her and that was painful, but you were in a dark place. You didn't make any, you were not shy about that.
No.
But you found someone else. Yeah, someone who looks pretty damn good in a next generation uniform, if I do say God, so.
She's wonderful. I mean, we had one date and that was it. We've been together ever since. It was. Well,
so what's this? I mean, how were you went from obviously the end of something and it was painful and very, very difficult, but then you kind of picked yourself up and you were open to it. How did you open yourself up again after the experience of losing the love of your life to be open to finding somebody else? How were you able to do that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I was suicidal. There was no reason to live. I'd be saying that to myself every day.
You'd say that on Facebook.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't looking for sympathy, but I thought people should know how this goes. I thought it might help people. Plus it also that I did a lot of writing about it.
You did.
That is part of the way I worked my way through it, by writing about it. That was like better than a psychiatrist by light years. It really helped me to get my head straight. Mm. I think that really was the linchpin of it, how I got through it, by writing about it. And then I would post on my page. And people really responded,
Yeah.
I mean, they had known me for years at this point. I had a blog before that, the Drex Files.
Which is incredible, and you should put it back up. It was incredible.
That was... I learned an awful lot. I always loved the idea of a magazine, like we did the poster book. Mm-hmm. And this was like having my own magazine. I could put pictures in and write articles, and that was really great. So writing about my experience, what happened with holy crap. I mean, I don't know. Did I ever tell you the story about the red rose?
I don't know. Tell the story.
She had been gone for about 4 weeks. And I was just barely coming out of this cloud where I could even notice what was going on around me. I mean, I wasn't eating and I went out in the backyard and I noticed that all her rose bushes that she always took care of were all dried and dying. And I was like, oh my God, I can't let these die. And there were no leaves on them, no flowers. And so I started watering them. And about a week and a half later, I come out of the house and I see a pop of color, red. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a single red rose, not another one, not a bud anywhere else, a single red rose. And I just knew it was from Dorothy. And I cried right there. I cried. You know, losing someone can really turn you into a crybaby. And you know what? You want to cry.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
It's good. You need to.
So I was sure it was her. Now, this is where it gets kind of crazy here, so bear with me. Dorothy worked with a guy who was he was a TV producer that goes way back. He was one of the, movers and shakers in Los Angeles, and he did shows that you'd be familiar with.
Yeah.
He did reality shows. And he says to me, Doug, and because he was checking in on me.
Right.
He never really talked to me much until Dorothy died. Then he was like checking in on me and talking to me. And he said, I know this is going to sound weird. He goes, but I've worked on a lot of reality shows, and I think that you should talk to a medium. And I was like kind of stunned a little bit, because here's a guy who was no nonsense. And he says, I've done a lot of reality shows, and there is one guy I think is really legitimate. It's actually legitimate. He says, why don't you try talking to him? Because I'm telling you, what I've seen is amazing. And so I got his number and I called him and I set up a telephone meeting. And I remember I told Denise, and she like rolled her eyes. And I said, look, I don't expect anything to come out of it. He said I should do it. I'm going to do it. If he gets one thing that's close to right, I'll be amazed. Well, he didn't hit me with one thing. He hit me with like a half a dozen things that there's no way he could have known.
Wow.
And there were 3 people approached him. My mother, for one, my father, and he knew things about them that were, there's no way you could have found that on the internet. No way. And finally, Dorothy. And the thing that blew my mind was, as the conversation was getting towards the end, he said to me, she's handing you a single red rose, she's handing you a single red rose, she says you'll understand. And this had just happened a few days earlier.
Wow.
It blew my mind. Now, I have no idea. I don't know. I know enough to know I don't know anything.
Right.
And I actually got a tattoo he's sitting on it. A tattoo of a red rose with her signature on my forearm.
Wow.
But that was great. Would you mind getting off for a few minutes? I don't have any blood left in my arm. Come here. Go ahead, baby. Go ahead. Come on. Go ahead. Thank you. Holy cow. Ow.
Did you feel, oh, that's really cool. Did you feel then that was a way that was somebody saying, you can, I want you to move forward?
Yeah. One thing I will say, and I was mad at the universe, that Dorothy should go like that, and not in a good way. Such a wonderful person. How can you do this? The universe. How is this? How did this happen to her? And I don't know if you remember this, but then I got hit with prostate cancer while she was going through her thing.
I remember that, because she and I had some exchanges about this.
Yeah.
And
Both of us at the same time, it was like the universe is turning on me, I survived and I'm all good. I just had a PET scan checkup like a couple of months ago. Everything's good.
And you found somebody else, that which is great. And
Donna has been. I feel like Dorothy arranged it.
Right?
Because I know Dorothy. I know her. If there is a place that you go to, I know that she stuck her finger in somebody's face and said, "Take care of my Doug." I know it. But since then, my life has turned around so much. I feel like the universe is sorry. It's like, we're really sorry that had to happen, but here's a wonderful girl, and here's these projects, and I've always been a very, I'm not wobbly, I have a lot of faith in myself. I was suicidal, there's no doubt about it, but it wasn't, I was in another state. I won't call it depression. It was something else, I just felt detached from life. So I had 32 years with the most amazing girl. I found love again. I feel very young and enthusiastic and passionate still. There's no,
there's no reason to stop being that way.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, Star Trek fans have that in common. We were passionate about something when we were younger, and it never goes away. Believe me, since 2017 and Discovery premiered, I wish it did, but it doesn't go away. But I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to end this interview. First of all, I want to thank you for your time. Another great 2 hours we've spent, which is fantastic. I never tire talking with you. But now you've got a great documentary that's being made. It's a Kickstarter.
That's right. We were supposed to talk about that.
Well, I wanted to bring it up because it's a Kickstarter campaign. It's in the last 2 or 3 days of the campaign. Yeah. We're almost, well, not we're, but you're almost over the finish line.
And it looks like tight, but I think
I think you're going to get there. What's really cool is, first of all, I love your Kickstarter campaign. I love all the videos that you've done in support of the Kickstarter campaign. They're really fun. Like I just watched that other one where you had the map of the trials and tribulations, or troubles and tribulations.
Oh, yeah.
More troubles, more troubles, trials and tribulations.
Trials and tribulations.
Yeah, I'm always getting, it's tough.
That was amazing seeing that again.
Yeah, it was really cool. So this documentary is about your life, and I think anybody that's watched these interviews will know how wildly entertaining the documentary, which is called Trek Star, and which is a perfect title. Tell us a little bit about the documentary and how excited about it you are, and what we can hope to see when it finally gets made, and it will get made.
I had after losing Dorothy, and this was part of my way of working through it, was that I decided that I'd better write. I've got some good stories. I need to write them down, and so I wrote my memoir, which will have the same title, and theoretically we'll probably see it out in late spring. But I wrote a memoir, and when I met Jason Smith, who's the director, I don't know if I told you, I was coming out of Talleyrand, and he recognized me, and I thought he was a Star Trek fan, and he is, but I didn't realize that he was a professional in the business, and that he did behind the scenes, things about TV shows, and has a lot of experience. And he's also a sweet guy, funny, and we hit it off good. It's like he called me. I just looked at Facebook and saw his first message to me, saying, "We met a couple of months ago at the Talleyrand, and that's when he told me what he did, and that he wanted to do a documentary." And I didn't know. I thought it would be I think there's a lot of good stories there. I didn't know if anyone would be interested or not, but he really thought that people would be, and he wanted to do it. So, and I hadn't seen any of his work at that point. I just assumed because it's his business. But when I saw the first trailer he did for the Kickstarter thing with the two of us, I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. He's got his editing is, funny and sharp, and I don't want any story about me to be too serious. Dick Smith always said that I helped him to be irreverent.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah, from Dick Smith. I mean, I have a videotape of Dick Smith singing sea shanties. And he would never do stuff like that. I don't know. It was kind of like Patrick Stewart coming on board with all those other people. They taught him to be sillier. I think I helped Dick be silly, but forgot what I was going to say. What was I saying?
You were talking about teaching him to be irreverent.
Well, yeah. But before that,
about humor. You want things to be funny.
Yeah,
You don't want it to be serious.
I want every story to have a punchline to it. It's just not relating an incident. You hear the story, you see how it came to this point, and then something amusing or funny happens at the end of it that makes you go, "Oh my God!" That's what I want. And most of the stories I have in my memoir are like that. But I find that one of the great things about Jason, and you've seen it, is that he'll call up and say, "I want to just drop by and, do a cell phone video of you going around the 6-foot NX model that Russell Myers gave me."
Man, that's cool.
Well, I mean, once the thing is that when it comes to Star Trek, once I get going, it's like there's no end. I can't stop talking. It's like it's really amazing. So he could get me talking about stuff. Although I have to admit, getting into business and having to do a lot of interviews, especially when we were on Dick Tracy, where they take us to a soundstage with like 40 round tables, and every table had like 5 reporters at it.
Right.
And you go from table to table to table and just talk. And you get to the point where it doesn't bother you anymore. You're not nervous. You're not scared anymore. You feel like you know what you're talking about. And so being on camera and talking about stuff that's happened to me just is easy. But there's fun stories. I think there's a lot of life stories in it too. I covered Dorothy,
Yeah, I mean, look, just the 2 interviews we've done here have been so illuminating and so much fun. And you're such an entertaining personality, and I think that you have done so much and you have a lot to share. I mean, I can't wait to read your memoir. And I think how many people write a book and have to wait to get a movie made? You're kind of doing them in tandem, which is kind of neat.
Things that are crossing over each other,
Yeah, and it's called, so for everybody, if you haven't signed up now, you can go to Kickstarter for the next couple of days and support Trek Star, the Doug Drexler documentary, and you can see. Yeah, we need your help. Doug needs your help, and the team needs your help, because I think it's going to be. And you asked me to participate, so we need your help. So I think, first of all, it's, as anyone who's watched these 2 days of interviews knows how worthwhile a documentary like this can be, how much fun it'll be, and you've had such an interesting career. But I also, in terms of these kinds of stories, being a documentarian, we don't get this stuff anymore. And the stories of people who have these kinds of lives like you did. I was a documentarian for 20 years, but now there's no more budgets. The studios don't want to pay for these kinds of documentaries to be made. So the only way to get them made is to crowdfund them or find people that will pay for them. And I think it's really worthwhile. And you guys have run an extraordinary Kickstarter campaign. The videos that you've made are so much fun to watch. And the campaign has been entertaining. So that's always a good thing. Jason
is a passionate go-getter who is a huge Star Trek geek.
Yeah.
He's one of us.
Totally.
I mean, so much. As a matter of fact, was it Friday night or whatever, in the pouring rain, we were having rain here, drove all the way to Anaheim with his father for a showing of Wrath of Khan that William Shatner was going to be doing.
Yeah.
With Brian Volk Weiss.
Right.
And I mean, drove all the way to Anaheim and back in all that rain to do it.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's the most amazing. Star Trek is amazing. We all learn something from it. It's philosophical. But there is a connection between the people who are all really deeply into it that is almost supernatural in a way,
Yeah.
It's uncanny, really. There's nothing else like that for me.
No, and there's something of I think it's a baked in philosophical. There's a something about how you approach life that is inherent that I think came out of Star Trek. And
when you get into situations, don't you run it through the Spock machine, the Kirk machine, the McCoy?
Yes.
You run it through all those machines.
And also, I've told people when I was younger, let's boldly go somewhere. You know, you don't. The answer is always, should we do this thing? The answer is yes. We should boldly go do this thing, because I know if we don't go do this thing, nothing will happen. But if you go somewhere, like, yes, you should go to Spain or France or Korea or Israel or Russia, or, you know, because that way something's going to happen. Boldly go where you've never gone before, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally, whether it's geographically.
I should have mentioned this. My girlfriend's name is Donna. She's Korean. She grew up in Seoul till she was like 23 years old. The amazing thing about that is we don't have a shared childhood. So she's allowing me to review things that I loved in another way because she doesn't know anything about them. And that's really, really exciting, you know?
Yeah.
But so there, I just had to fill that in there. I know we
no, but that's I mean, that's how exciting is that? You get to sit down and show somebody that hasn't, and you get a different perspective. I mean, before I met Elizabeth, I dated this girl that really wasn't a Star Trek fan at all. She was a producer and she'd never seen it. And I sat down and curated the original series for her. And she was smart enough to she was really into it. And I said, well, the real test is going to come when I curated like 30 episodes. And I said, the real test is going to come now when I'm going to show you a movie. She goes, you're going to show me a movie? And I said, yes, we're going to watch Star Trek The Motion Picture. And she goes, well, I thought that she'd heard of Star Trek too. I'm like, nah, it doesn't count. We're going to watch Star Trek The Motion Picture. And the real test is to see where you're at after that movie's over. And of course, she loved it. And especially now, the 4K restoration, I had the director's cut. We watched that. But, you know, that's the real test because there's people that you're either going to vibe with for the rest of your life and they have to like Star Trek The Motion Picture. Everybody likes Star Trek too. That's easy. But
yeah, that's true. That's true. Star Trek The Motion Picture is its own thing. It's not like any of the other movies.
No, and it's been very gratifying watching these reaction channels, like watching, you know, women in their 20s and 30s who are discovering Star Trek for the first time. They all love Star Trek The Motion Picture because there was no bias. You know, like at the time, people didn't like it, but people like Star Trek 5 these days. Not as much, but they still, you know.
There's plenty to like about it. I had a friend who like cut it down to an hour, like an episode, and even put music from the original series in it. It really
it's totally. Right. I mean, you can make it work. It's the tone of it's all over the place, and it's interesting because Shatner's original story was pretty good. I mean,
that's what Mike told me.
Yeah, it was really. I think it was called Act of Love, which was the original title of the treatment. But listen, Doug, I want to give you back your Sunday. You've now given me almost 2.5 hours of your time, total of 4.
And you know we can talk for another 2.5 hours.
I mean, this has been such a wonderful experience, and I want to thank you for opening up and being as candid and as fun to talk to. And again, your Kickstarter campaign's running. It's called Trek Star. So if you go to Kickstarter, just search for Trek Star and contribute. And also, I would encourage everybody to watch all your videos that go along with the Kickstarter campaign and to follow you on, if you can't find them somehow, follow you on Facebook, and you've got them all on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this has been fantastic.
I had a great time. We always have a great time.
We do. And Doug, where can people find you? Are you anywhere other than social media? Do you have your own? I know the Drex Files is not there, but do you have a website people can go and visit or send you?
Right now it's my Facebook page.
Okay.
I don't, that's about it, really. That's the best place to get in touch with me is on Facebook.
Major Chai Chai, our real Air Force Major, says, thank you, Doug, for sharing your Star Trek memories.
Major Chai Chai.
So that was, and she's great. And she's also very talented, actually. So this has been fantastic, man. And we'll come back and we'll do this one more time. And I look forward to participating however you need me in your doc. So Doug Drexler, the great Doug Drexler, what a career you have had. And I want to thank you for being here on Robservations, and it's been great speaking with you over these last 2 episodes.
Thank you, and thank you everybody who is out there.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday and say hi to Donna for us.
I will. Great talking, Rob.
All right,
Bye,
man.
everybody.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And I didn't mean to let him go so quickly. But everybody, that was the great Doug Drexler. To know him is to love him. And I do want to play, this is the Kickstarter video. I want to play it one more time, and I'll come back when the video's done.
You know, when I was 13 years old, my father told me if I put half as much time into my schoolwork as I put into that television show, I'd be all right. I guess it did work out pretty well. I mean, my father did go with me to the Academy Awards, so, I mean, can you beat that?
Thank you, incredible. And we're here to tell the story of Doug's life in a new documentary. Doug has won an Oscar, 2 Emmys, 2 Peabodys, and he's got a Klingon named after him. He designed multiple enterprises, blew up Cylon base stars, turned Al Pacino into a comic book gangster, and in 1988, I kid you not, he helped the FBI hijack a 747 jumbo jet from JFK Airport.
I did?
Too late, it's out there. Doug was part of the genesis of Star Trek fandom, spun it into an incredible career in makeup, graphic design, visual effects, and more. And he helped pass the torch on to the next generation.
You know, I've been on so many bridges, Klingon, Federation, you name it, and with some of the most amazing actors and wonderful directors in Hollywood. But I've also spent my years on the lower decks with the working stiffs. And I mean the men and the women that do the hard, unglamorous work of bringing a movie or a TV show to life.
We really made some magic here. I can't get over it.
Unless you stick around for the closing credits, you've never heard of us.
And we're going to tell their stories.
I grew up in New York City, and I fell in love with the 1964-65 New York World's Fair, which was really ground zero for Star Trek aesthetic and design. Much like Star Trek, it was about a hopeful vision of the future, the idea that working together we could create something great. And I live my life by that belief, and I want to share it with my friends and the world.
As a kid, I loved reading books like this and watching videos like this, where I learned that shows and movies were made by real people like you and me. I've made an entire career out of telling stories like these, and in my years working with the crack team behind this documentary, we've taken fans backstage of the Arrowverse, Supernatural, the Vampire Diaries, and more. Over 115 different movies and TV series. But Doug Drexler's story is like nothing I've ever seen.
You can be a part of it.
Back our project today and join the team that will bring this documentary to life.
Because after all, we're just one big happy fleet. Isn't that right?
That's true.
And there you go. That is the Kickstarter for Trek Star, the Doug Drexler documentary. I mean, come on. How can you not want to support a documentary like that? It's Doug's such a great guy. And, you know, I think I've known the guy for like 30 years. So it was great to have him come on and share his story. And thank you all for watching. I mean, I know it's interesting to me that I love bringing on people. Like, I love doing the Designing Hollywood podcast, and I love being able to talk to people like Doug. But it's funny, on YouTube, it's not the thing that generates the most views and things like that. But I think it's really important. So I really appreciate everybody that takes the time to watch these videos, because, look, obviously I'm having a ball doing them. And I would love to bring more people on. I mean, I talked to so many people in the course of business, but I know that it's different. I mean, YouTube is more of a hang out with your friends sort of a place, as opposed to bringing industry professionals on. But somebody like Doug, to me, has always been so inspiring, and his life is really, it really is a testament to, you can be a fan and you can become a consummate professional. And a lot of that, I mean, I don't know if I could ever be. I've kind of done that, but I've always had a problem not being a fan. No, but I've done a lot of things too, but I didn't get to work on Star Trek the way Doug did. So it's amazing. I've always admired him and what he did. And of course, Mike and Denise Akuta as well. One day I'll have to get the two of them on, and Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens. Thing is, Mike and Denise can't come on the show because they have no idea what I would say. I would probably get a little uncouth, but to that end, no, I wouldn't, Doug. And I was able to hold my own with Doug, and I was not, my P's and Q's. Doug feels the same way that I do. But I think I'm going to come on. I might do a double header today, and I might talk about this Star Trek news because I have thoughts. And people are asking me about it, so I might come back tonight. I have to drive to the airport and pick up I guess you'd call them the in-laws in a way, which is not going to be fun in the storm. So I'm heading out. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank the great Doug Drexler for giving me 4.5 hours of his time, probably even more than that. It was great to have him on the show. And I will be back. I'm going to be doing a lot of shows toward the end of November. We are going to get the short story competition launched. I am working on all the Kickstarter campaign stuff. So I want to get all that stuff finished. It's just a lot of work. And then we have to actually manufacture it. So, yeah. And we will be back next week. Let's Get Physical Media's 5th anniversary show. I can't believe we've been doing it for 5 years. Dieter will return, just like James Bond will return. Dieter will be coming back next week for our show. Max Allan Collins will be back, and hopefully a potpourri of guests. We'll see. If we don't want to have, I still want Elliot Cohen to come on. We want Elliot. And I wanted to see if George Feltenstein can come back on, maybe somebody from Kino Lorber. Whoever wants to come on. If you want to come on, Let's Get Physical Media, and we've been talking about you or your company or whatever, please come on. I want to thank Lisa Stevenson at Lionsgate for coming on, and I want her to come on again. I did get for those of you I'm sure you're wanting to know, I did get the Descent 4K in the Steelbook, and I got that airport box set from Kino Lorber. God bless you, Kino Lorber. Even when we're not talking about you on Let's Get Physical Media, I'm thinking about you anyway. So there we go. And I will thank you all for being here. Thanks for sharing your Sunday with me. And I can only say, so many times, remember, everybody you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And once again, I want to thank Doug Drexler for coming on the show twice. Head on over to Kickstarter, support Trekstar. You can even see from that Kickstarter video how well done and how well produced that documentary is going to be. So get on the Drexler bandwagon and support. Beaker needs Doug to make this documentary. Beaker needs to be starring in a film of his own, and hopefully that will happen. And on that note, I say to all of you, have a better day.